instead of saying like, okay, I need to be perfect at everything and everything needs to be perfect, exactly as you said before, like celebrating the wins, the small steps, the little things, because it's not about having it be perfect every day. It's about good that compounds over and over and over again to build something bigger.
Welcome to the Mentor Files. I'm your host, Monica Royer, founder and CEO of Monica and Andy. Join me as I chat with leaders across the fields of entrepreneurship, parenthood, health, and lifestyle. This season, we're digging deeper than ever before to learn the story behind the story. Think of the show as one part Audible MBA and one part certification to be the confident CEO of your own life. Here we go. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Manuela Zoninsein, the founder of Kadeya, to the Mentor Files. Manuela's company, Kadeya, is a low-waste hydration vending machine that was honored with Fast Company's World-Changing Idea Award this year. With Kadeya and beyond, Manuela is on a mission to eliminate single-use waste. And as her sister-in-law, I can attest that she practices exactly what she preaches. During this conversation, we spoke about Manuela's experience in an immigrant family and about her early days in China, which opened her eyes to the pressing risks of single-use plastics. Plus, Manuela shares how she came around to the idea of being an entrepreneur and explains more about Kadeya and motherhood. I know you will enjoy this conversation. Manuela, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that very flattering introduction. Great to be here.
My gosh, well, flattering and true, Manuela. I'm so excited I feel like we sit down and talk all the time because we see each other all the time. But as other people with big families will know, it's on the go. There's kids. There's so many different things happening. And so it's really exciting to actually be able to sit down and focus on a conversation today, which is something we don't normally get a chance to do.
It's true. It is always in passing, and we get to share little tidbits of what's going on.
Yes.
So fun to dig in.
It is
real.
Very fun to dig in. So first and foremost, I feel like there's so much about this season's podcast that's about the story behind the story. But before we get to the story behind the story with you, I want to get to the story in front, which is Kadeya. So let's start there, Manuela. And I want to say that Manuela is one of the most environmentally incredible people that I've ever met. She practices what she preaches down to a T. And so it was no surprise to me that Manuela's startup was going to be rooted in making the world a better place to live. Manuela, tell everybody a little bit about Kadeya.
Thank you so much for that intro. So Kadeya eliminates the need for single-use beverage containers forever for everyone. And the way we do that is we've designed a bottling plant that is the size of a vending machine. And you interact with it just like a vending machine. So you go up to it, you choose what beverages you want, we deliver it in a bottle, you grab it and go. Unlike a vending machine, though, you return the bottle to any station in the network. You know, we're both in Chicago, so think of divvy bikes for bottles. And then our patented unit itself will wash, sanitize, inspect, and refill the bottle, which it turns out not only eliminates the pesky packaging people love to complain about, it also eliminates the carbon footprint of transporting beverages all over the world. And I know that may not sound like the most important climate problem that we all need to solve right away, but for context, we estimate that it's about 1.5% of global emissions, just the beverage distribution industry. And so while we wait for, fusion to potentially happen sometime in our lifetimes, or net zero cement or steel, at Kadeya, we figure let's go after the low-hanging fruit and allow everyone to start sipping sustainably right away.
Incredible. And I'm thinking about schools and airports and all of the places where you need water, but to having a service like that is kind of beyond comprehension in such a good way. But no surprise that you thought of it. Manuela, tell us a little bit about what led you down the path to building Kadeya and a little bit about your background.
So as you know, I'm a three-time entrepreneur. So of course, when I was getting to know Andy and then got to meet you and your family, it was very exciting to me that you all were also entrepreneurs and, we're living, I don't know, is it the dream or the nightmare? But
A fine line.
yeah, but that you all understood what life as an entrepreneur is like, and that just felt so welcoming. And so, yeah, my first business I started kind of accidentally, as sometimes the best businesses do. I was living in China at the time, and we sold data around the market for agriculture technology in China. I was living in China at that time and stumbled upon this opportunity. And that's really when I started meeting you. So I was coming back and forth between Beijing and New York, where Andy was living, and we would kind of concoct ways as a family to all get together, like in random places. And we always were kind of like, ships in the night. What are you doing? Oh, fundraising. How's the product? How's business? And ultimately, that business, I decided to sell the assets to a local Chinese partner when kind of politically it wasn't the right time anymore for me as a foreigner to build that business in China. And then I had gotten a grant from the Brazilian government and started my second business called InstaAgro, which is now one of the largest online marketplaces in Brazil for smallholder farmers. And I was born in Brazil, moved to the States when I was 7. And that was another really, it's just funny how you kind of birds of a feather flock together, right? And we, like your mother, being an immigrant, my father being an immigrant, and myself having immigrated to the US, there's a lot of similarities, I think, in our families. And was building that business, but realized I wasn't going to be the one to take that to the next level. B, I was, in a relationship with Andy and wanted to move back to the States and see that through. And C, simultaneously got a call from the one company I ever wanted to work for called Palantir Technologies, and it gave me the opportunity to go back to New York. So I moved to New York and did the kind of corporate day job for a couple of years and settled back into life in the US. And Andy and I got married and knew that I was going to go back into entrepreneurship. And through my time at Palantir, stumbled upon the new opportunity with Kadeya, where I worked with the kitchen staff to launch a reusable water bottle program, just a side hustle at the company, and ran that for 3 years and learned a ton about why reusable bottles as we have them today, whether it's your Stanley Cup or your Swell or your Yeti, whatever your brand of choice might be. Unfortunately, that is not the scalable silver bullet for single use that we all hope it will be.
Mm-hmm.
And decided to focus my efforts on that. Went to business school to study the problem and decided when I graduated to go full time. So June of 2020, launched Kadeya and have been at it for the last almost 3.5 years. And, then in that time, Andy and I moved back to Chicago, which has just been a blessing to be near you guys. And even though it's still kind of like, ships in the night passing, we still get these moments to catch up and share notes and get to, be close to you guys. And of course, have all the amazing family support that I think entrepreneurs in general, but especially women, mom founders need in order to, make it happen.
Definitely. And if you can picture just giving a little bit of a peek behind the scenes of our lives, which is funny to think about in this more formal conversational setting, is when Andy and Manuela first moved back to Chicago, they actually, for a short time, we live in this multi-generational family kind of throughout the city, but my parents literally live a single floor below us in our condo building. So my husband and and Bella have a condo on the 4th floor. My parents are on the 3rd floor. And we had just moved out of a different unit. We really like the building that we're in. We had just moved out of a different unit on the 4th floor into our unit. And so Andy called me and he said, hey, we've just bought this new place in Chicago, but we may need a place to stay for a short term. Can we stay in your old place? And we said, of course, absolutely. And so there was like a short, I don't know if it was like 7, 8, 9, 4 months. I don't remember how much time it was, but it was absolutely incredible. It was sort of like we lived in this college dorm where you would come back and like you never knew who was going to be in which unit or what was happening, but it was mainly like meals that we were congregating together. And I think it was so much fun. And Manuela and Andy had just more recently had a son at that time. I think he was maybe like 1 year old. And so there were so many days where I was like dashing off to a meeting and he was like being pushed up the hallway in like his little blue car. And it was just like, it was absolutely magical to be able to do. And so huge kudos to both Manuela and my husband, Rob, who were brave enough to enter into this like blended biracial Indian family in which we take family extremely literally, as Manuela can attest to.
Yeah, that was so fun.
It
It was
was,
like a dorm. Like we were padding around in our pajamas, like exchanging Tupperware and oatmeal
oh my
and
gosh,
babies.
totally. And my mom does keep like significant track of her Tupperware too, which we'll give her credit for here. So it's like we made sure to return
Yeah,
the Tupperware. We made sure to
reuse.
return the Tupperware exactly at the end of the day. But in all seriousness, too, Manuel, I feel like you've had a son during that time. I feel like you and I have been through a lot, like both separately and together over the time that we've known each other. I think there's shared struggles in motherhood that we've both endured. I think, we've endured Andy's significant mental health crisis that he's gone through and knock on wood has come out the other side of. And I don't think I've ever had a chance to tell you how much I appreciate your tenacity. And like, I think that just even seeing the way that you tackle motherhood and entrepreneurship. And I think for the moms and the parents that are out there listening, tell us a little bit about how hard that is, because I think that it's just a struggle to be able to do all of it, as so many people that are listening know. And I think, Manuela has done such an incredible job of it, but it just isn't easy on a day-to-day basis to manage.
Thank you so much. Honestly, that means so much, especially coming from you because you've been doing it, you've been doing it for over a decade. And for sure, when Andy and I were thinking about having kids or a kid, I was like, how are we going to do this? And I look to you and as an example of how it can be done. Yeah, I mean, I've super simplified my life. I also am amazed, like all the things that you're doing on top of the basics. Like, I say to everyone, I do three things every day. I hang out with my son, Isaiah. I work on the business, Kadeya, and I sleep. And anything above that is a bonus. If I get a coffee, if I eat something, if I'm drinking the right amount of water, and I'm in the water business, that's a bonus. And I don't know how you do, like you still cook and you exercise, like those things are just totally beyond me. So it's about accepting that you can't do it all and really simplifying. And I guess the flip side of it has been it's really forced focus at the business. So we are really clear about a very specific go to market. And because we're a hardware enabled business, also, we're really clear about how the product has to come first all the time. And it's always a balancing act. It's not like every day we hit that, golden mean, but it's about kind of zigging and zagging and tacking toward that ideal. So I think, for example, right now, Kadeya is like, we're killing it on sales, we're killing it on marketing. And we're now saying, okay, time to focus again on the product. And so it's not that you hit it right every single day. And the other thing, and you've talked a lot about this, behind closed doors, is forgiving yourself all the time. And at the end of the day, coming home and knowing, okay, I dropped a ball. That's fine. Tomorrow I'll adjust and maybe I'll drop a different ball,
Mm-hmm.
but not beating myself up about that because that just undermines my ability to do better the next day. So really letting go of any guilt that I maybe used to hold on to.
Definitely. And I think it's like, and you and I have talked about this too before as parents, it's kind of celebrating the small wins. Manuela did this incredible job of setting us up to go to this amazing play over the weekend. We had the kids and and obviously with Isaiah, like one of his first plays, and oh my goodness, did he rock it out. I was so impressed. And we made it through to the intermission. And I think we could have actually stayed for the whole thing because the kids were doing great. But we're like, you know what? Let's chalk this up as a win and let's go get some snacks now. So I think sometimes it's like knowing your limitations before you hit the limitation from a parenthood perspective. And I think so much of that could be taken into the business world too, where, you do have to, and, Bella literally does this where if she does something well, it's great. She literally will, like in school, like give themselves a little pat on the back. And sometimes I have to remember, like, such a great thing to do. Like, how often do you reach your hand back of your shoulder and say, you know what, job well done? And I think sometimes as moms and parents, we need to do a little bit more of that for ourselves because to your point, you at the end of the day, a lot of times you zero in on the things that you could have done better or the things that could have gone better. And I think sometimes if you've just literally survived the day, like people are fed, they're asleep, like everybody's healthy and okay, that is a big part of survival through entrepreneurship and parenthood. And sometimes, like, I think it's so special to be able to go home and to be able to snuggle your kid on a bad day too, because just trying to be thankful for what's actually there, because I think the work can take you down paths often where I have to remind myself all the time, as much as I enjoy it, I asked for this level of stress with all of the things that come along with it. And so constantly reminding myself that nobody forced me on this journey, but I have chosen to be on it is something that like I have to continue to tell myself again and again.
Absolutely. And you've also talked about this, and this is a big reason why Andy and I did move to Chicago is, we have a network here. Like you guys have been amazing. So it's not at all just me or just Andy, right? We have an incredible nanny, first of all, and we're lucky to be able to afford her help. And then you come over once or twice a week with Bella to like hang out with Isaiah, give him food, help put him to bed. Your mom and dad do the same. We take Isaiah over to you guys like almost all day Sunday. It's just amazing that I have a Sunday that I can sit there and just like plod through emails. I don't know how, honestly, without you guys, it would not be possible. So that's the other piece. It's not like I have like a magic wand. I have amazing in-laws, who make it possible.
Of course. And for the record, too, we do come over and Belle and I are terrible at actually getting Isaiah to go to sleep, just so everyone knows. So, like, we put him to bed, but to sleep, he will not go if we're there. I mean, these kids, and everybody knows that's listening to it, they are so darn smart. Like, can I have another Cheerio? Can I have a sip of water? And, like, it's different, too. It's so interesting to be an aunt. So he calls me Bua, which in Punjabi is really your dad's sister. So there's different like names for like for everybody in like a big Indian family. And I had really had so many Masis. So Bua, at first I was like, I have some Buas, but and the way that he said he has just like made it for me. Where like now I like love it. But when he's like, Bua, you can't leave the room. I love you too much to go to sleep. It's so different when it's like one step removed, where on your own kid, you'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm not buying that. Like you're going straight to sleep. But when you're just like a little bit removed, you're like, you know what? I am buying that. And you do love me so much that I just can't leave the room. And that's fine if you don't go to sleep. But it's a little different when you're not the one that ultimately then poor Andy and Manuela come home and we're like, oh, well, he's actually still up. But I guess that's the benefits of being an aunt is you get to enjoy a little bit more of like a fast and loose system with things because they really do wrap you around their little finger.
Yes, and I'm happy for him to have a bua like that. And that knows kind of blurs the lines a little bit. He knows like some people have certain rules, bua has other rules. He
Yes.
feels special,
Yes,
he loves it.
definitely. Bua's fast and loose rules for sure are a little bit lighter than what the parents are putting out there. But to your more universal point, Manuel, I think for moms and women that are out there that are thinking about entrepreneurship, and this can extend well beyond it, it really is like building that support network for yourself and how you do it. Because I mean, I think you guys made a significant life change moving from New York City to Chicago to be part of this like sort of like integrated familial ecosystem. And I'll say, like, to the credit of my parents and you and Andy, I definitely couldn't have had my entrepreneurial journey without that extra support. So I think that knowing that you're going to need that support and that there's going to be all of these things that are unplanned and you need that flexibility to lean on people, I think is incredibly important for women to realize as they're entering that journey. So it's possible to be able to do so many different things, but it's hard to do them in complete isolation, and having an opportunity to raise families in this way, I think has been so beneficial for both of us. And I'll say one other thing too, because I definitely want you to comment on it as well, is I read something that said that it's really nice for parents to be able to see intergenerational families as well, because even, as you know, my dad's dealt with like certain health crisis. And I think that kids, when they're able, and again, we're fortunate there's people that's parents are no longer alive and they're, no longer with them. And I know that you've experienced that on one side of your family as well. But I think children being able to appreciate the life cycle and see where, that like what aging looks like and all of that, I think helps, I hope, to ground them later in life. And I know that's not something that like that everybody is just has the luxury of being able to have, but it's been really nice to be able to see.
100%. I'm like a counterpoint or counter example to that. Like we moved to the States when I was a kid and didn't have extended family around us. And so I always felt a little bit unmoored like I didn't have like roots, so to speak. And that comes from being an immigrant as well. But like not having older people and younger people around me to remind me like, oh, this is all just a phase in life, right? And it's all
Mm-hmm.
part of a bigger picture. Absolutely. I always felt like I lacked that. And so I'm so happy for Isaiah to be able to have that and feel like he's part of like this, like, broader tree, and network, and can feel like he's really grounded so that whatever else he decides to do later on, right? He knows like, okay, this is my background. This is who I am. So completely agree with you. And you actually mentioned something else. And this goes back to a little bit earlier in our conversation that I wanted to mention, especially for like the moms or the parents out there. A quote that has helped me a lot is I don't remember how I came across this, and I'm not like into cars, whereas Isaiah, obviously, and Andy are very into cars, a very boy thing. But a quote from a former race car driver, Mario Andretti. I have no idea who he is, but I love the quote. He says, if everything seems under control, you're not going fast enough. And I like to remember that, like, whereas as girls and women being raised, I think we were taught more to be like perfectionists and have like whatever we share out with the world should already have like perfect punctuation and the color coordination and everything needs to look nice. And I love thinking instead how to be an entrepreneur, perfect is the enemy of good. And
Mm-hmm.
instead, you want to get good at just being good, not get good at being perfect, right? Because the job of an entrepreneur changes so rapidly and so constantly that your job is not to be perfect at every stage, but it's to be good enough at every stage so that when you bring in people who are better than you can at least keep up and have an eye of what are the missing pieces in
Mm-hmm.
your puzzle. And so I that's been helpful as well to kind of lower the bar a little bit for yourself in a way. Don't take that quote out of context, but instead of saying like, okay, I need to be perfect at everything and everything needs to be perfect, exactly as you said before, like celebrating the wins, the small steps, the little things, because it's not about having it be perfect every day. It's about good that compounds over and over and over again to build something bigger.
Definitely. And Manuela, thinking about your journey to motherhood, yeah, Isaiah just turned 3. So like 4 years sort of into the journey. Is it what it's fresher for you. So as people that are listening to this that are thinking about having kids or maybe just did, is motherhood what you expected?
It's better than what I expected. I had very low expectations though. I did not think I would. I mean, I never thought I would get married and I never thought I'd have a kid. It's not that I was against either of those things. I just never had imagined it. I think a lot of people have a very clear idea like, yes, I will get married one day and I want to have a family. I had none of those visions. So I kind of went into it blind. And I remember I was pregnant and you remember it was like COVID and you guys came
Gosh, it
out
was
and
so
visited
crazy.
us. We had rented a house on Long Island. And I remember, I mean, I was like, I don't know, a month or two shy of giving birth. And you were like, so this is how it's going to happen. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I was just like, kind of was taking it day by day. And that's kind of how I'm doing it as well. So it's been amazing. Yeah. I don't know. I tell a lot of women, especially women entrepreneurs or women in STEM and people who are really ambitious, I think they have their hesitations and they feel like it's a trade off. And Yeah, I have less energy and I can do less work each day. On the other hand, I feel that I'm more grounded, and I, as you said, have that reward every day coming home and feeling like I'm building something beyond Kadeya, and also allows me to just be more strategic and efficient with my time, from a business perspective. But I tell those girls or those women are like, it's been a great experience for me and I'm so grateful. So you don't have to sacrifice career to be a mom, but it is hard.
It is. And I think that my biggest takeaway after sort of 12 years of being at it is, and this is just my personal feeling, so not to extrapolate this, like other people could have different thoughts. I feel like you can have it all, but you can't necessarily have it all at once. And so I think when you're an entrepreneur and a mother, you can definitely have like motherhood and a career at the same time. And then for me, sometimes I look at like, I don't necessarily, and really fortunate to have you and Andy to spend time with Rob and I. And like you said, family is such a big central component of like what we do. Sometimes I wish I had more time to spend with friends or like more time to go out and do other things. And I realized that like maybe in the short term, like that's the sacrifice. And it doesn't have to be. There's other people that have a career and motherhood and friendship and all of that. But I think sometimes you have to look at what's the bigger picture of all the things that you could be doing. And you realize that like you're in this season of life. And I constantly have to remind myself that there will be other seasons where I won't be as busy as a mom. And I think it's interesting seeing the stage that Isaiah's at where you're so hands-on busy at that stage because literally you have to be like, where are you going? What are you doing? Don't fall off that. Don't jump over the sofa. Don't fall off but then you get to this other stage of parenthood where it's kind of like bigger kids, bigger problems. And we're not really into the big kid, big problem stage yet. But now it's interesting where when I go to pick Belle up, before I used to be able to kind of like drop her off with my parents and like get right back to it. And now sometimes I'm working until much later in the evening because she needs like a few more minutes when she gets home to tell me about her day and like unpack what happened and like how do we triage what's going on and then like what's the work that needs to be done. So I think sometimes you have to take a step back and be like, here's the list of like the 10 things for me in the order in which they're important. And I've never formally done that and be like, hey, I could definitely hit 8. These are the 2 that like maybe I'm waiting another 5 years to like dive back into. And so to me, that's been a little bit of like what those trade-offs have looked like. And maybe there's other people, and it'd be a good conversation to start to say, are there people that feel like they can do all of it at once and have every single thing that they want to be able to do? And maybe it's just me that isn't able to do some of that. But I think it's interesting to think about how sometimes having a child can like crystallize what's really important. And even though they fill your life with so much more to do, it's like they also help to point you, strangely enough, in like the direction that you need to go because it just helps to kind of crystallize your sort of like what you want to go after because to your point you just have like less time to be able to go after it, so you have to be more directed.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said.
Is there any advice, Manuela, as we're thinking about this, that you have for moms or parents or like anybody that's thinking about also starting their own company?
That's funny to think that I can give advice. Well, one thing that I'm proud of at Kadeya is our team, which is going to be 6 people full time soon. It draws from a huge variety of age ranges and backgrounds. And a lot of them are coming from having been in larger corporate environments. They also all have entrepreneurial background and experience. So they know the hustle, they knew what they were getting into, and they've chosen to come back into entrepreneurship in large part because they were sick of the kind of corporate grind and the politics. And that's what I hear consistently as to why they chose to come over to Kadeya is they love the people, they love the culture. And part of that culture that we're building is one where it's based on trust and believing that each person is an adult and is capable. That's why you're joining the company, because we believe in your judgment and your skills. And that means that if you have to go to a doctor's appointment one morning, you can just let everyone know, hey, I'm going to be out, doctor's appointment. Or I don't need to tell you why I'm going to be out. I'm going to be out. I have something I have to do. And I think that is in part thanks to, me setting that example and that standard. And everybody knows, okay, Isaiah had an ear infection last week, so I didn't sleep a lot, so I'm gonna be a little slow in meetings, or we have to go to the doctor, and I didn't get to send that email, or I didn't get to finish that PowerPoint because I was up really late or didn't have the break I thought I was going to have while Isaiah normally naps. So I don't know if that's exactly advice, but a lot of the like self-help, feel-good business language that people are starting to talk about is, bringing your whole self to work and being yourself. And so maybe that's the advice or the learning is, it starts with you as the founder and the leader, and setting that example of being vulnerable and being yourself allows others as well to be themselves, and I think bring their best selves to work, right? If you create that culture where it's okay to make a mistake, occasionally drop the ball, understanding and taking responsibility when that does happen, and how to make sure it doesn't happen all the time, right? It's not about like making the mistake and then having the mistake repeatedly happen, but it's allowing for those mistakes and then figuring out how to solve for them, or being yourself and bringing your real opinion. So it allows people, especially at the earliest stages of a company, to throw out crazy ideas. Hey, I've got this crazy idea. I know I'm kind of outside of my wheelhouse. What do you all think? And some of the best ideas that we've come across have been people who are weighing in outside of their area of expertise. And even if you look at Kadeya, we're doing something that no one else in the industry, in the beverage industry, has done before. It's not that we are inventing anything. We're not putting a man on the moon. It's not rocket science, literally. But we are innovating because we're doing things in ways that have been done, that we question the way things were being done. And that's in part because we brought people together who are a bit of outsiders to the industry. So kind of the same thing. And I'm sure that's true for what you've done at Monica and Andy, right? Where you look at the industry and you're like, why didn't anyone ever do it this way? Well, because it was all the same people sitting around the same table asking the same questions over and over. So I think allowing that space in your company culture to, trip a little bit and fall, and then admit that, and then think about how do you make it better going forward is a strength for Kadeya, at least.
I love that, Manuela. And I think that's so universal too, because I think while work has definitely creeped into life as we're tethered to our phone, and like many times, whether it's in the evening or on the weekend, like anybody with a job can say that like they've been stopped in their tracks by something that's happened outside of those hours. I think it only serves correctly to let life creep into work on the opposite side and say, hey, there's now flexibility on both sides. And I couldn't agree more. Our chief people officer often says, like, we're living life together in this like COVID and post COVID world in a way that we were literally in each other's living rooms for so long, right? And so that opens up like a new portal into what happens behind the scenes in people's lives. And I hopefully that vulnerability of leadership, Manuela, that you exhibit is something that a lot of other people can do as well.
I hope so. It's certainly a balancing act, right? As you know, because I think as women, especially, or people of color, minorities, underrepresented founders, I think we're held to higher standards. And so it can feel like we have to show up and be perfect all the time. But at the end of the day, what I've learned, and I learned this early on in high school, no matter how well I did on tests or what college I went to or what my project turned out, even if I quote unquote performed better than others, I was still behind the scenes, like docked socially for, oh, it's only because she's a girl or because she's attractive, or she didn't really earn that outcome. And I just learned no matter how well I perform, I won't get the credit and I will be dinged as different. And so that kind of liberated me, where I was like, oh, I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. So I might as well just do it the way I want to do it, because no matter what, I'm never going to match, or at least not for a long time, I'm not going to match that mold of what's expected from an entrepreneur. And that really alleviated a lot of pressure to show up as though I am, a white man. I don't have to behave like them. I can't. I never will be able to, even if I do everything to a T. And so that, I think, is I don't know if that feels like a relief to anybody else. It's felt like a relief and a liberation to me. And so that means, like, I don't need to be buttoned up at every meeting. I don't have to have the right answer all the time. I don't have to perform, some sort of like predetermined fashion that a CEO should behave. And instead I get to focus on like the meat and potatoes of building a business. Like, it's not that I'm throwing away the metrics and the standards. I'm saying, let's only focus on those and let's stop worrying about appearances as much and about the veneer of what like a CEO is supposed to do or look like.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'll leave you with one thought too that was interesting is like taking that same attitude into motherhood. I was supposed to go to a big event in New York at almost the start of the school year that I had agreed to go to before and was like one of the co-hosts of. And then as it got closer, there was something at my daughter Bella's school that like wasn't on the calendar as the when I made that plan over the summer, but came onto the calendar. And she literally was like, Mom, I can't do this without you. Like, I really want you to be able to be there. So my team and I talked about it, and I was like, should I say I'm sick? Like, what should I do? Like, here I am, like, pulling out of this at the last minute. And then it came to me, I'm just going to say the truth. I'm just going to be like, something came up for my daughter, and it's not life or death, but she says she needs me. And so that's going to have to be prioritized over this. And so I think it's living exactly what you're saying and bringing that to motherhood, too, where it's okay as moms, like we don't necessarily have to hide the decisions that we're making. If we're reaching a stress point, it's okay to be like, hey, maybe no one else understands this, but this is a stress point for our family. And I need to be able to be here to manage through X, Y, Z. And it was amazing. There was such an outpouring of love and support from the group that when I did say that, and conversations that were started and all of that. And so I think you're 100% right. I think living our best truth and not worrying about the expectations of what other people have, but doing what we feel is right for ourselves and our team and our family. And there's a lot of stakeholders to consider as you run down the list. But I think that's how, at the end of the day, you can at least feel, regardless of the outcome, that you did it in the way that you would be proud of doing it, no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of basic stuff, right? You have to wake up every day and look in the mirror at yourself.
Exactly. So, oh my gosh, Manuela, this was an absolute delight to be able to spend this time. I'm so excited that you came on and we were able to talk through this, and really excited to follow the journey of Kadeya forward.
Thank you for having me. Such an honor and a pleasure. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I am continually inspired by Manuela and her mission with Kadeya. You can find out more about the future of bottled water by visiting kadeya.com. We'll also have a link at our website, monicaandandy.com. If you have a moment today, please subscribe to the Mentor Files wherever you listen to podcasts. Your subscriptions and reviews mean so much. I'm your host, Monica Royer. See you next time.